you good? Laura, are you good? Okay. Before we get started, can you mark Marilyn as excused, please? She called me on the way in here. Okay. All right. I think we're going to kick things off then. Okay. Good afternoon, folks. I'd like to call the March meeting, the Environmental Resources Committee to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Following that, we'll have a brief moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on to item number 3 here, public comment, 15-minute limit. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I've got 8 folks signed up for public comment, but given our 15-minute limit, I think what we can do is
I'm sorry, Supervisor Longenhan, I believe those are for the Plover. Do they all say 6A3?
They do. So I think one option we would have is just to wait until item 6A3 and we could accept public. Actually, no, I'm going to take public comment now because as part of the notice, public comment wasn't included as part of 6A3, so we're going to take public comment now.
Okay.
Okay? All right. So for item number 3, public comment, 15-minute limit, like I was saying, I've got 8 people signed up to speak. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to give 2 minutes per individual. When it gets to about 15 seconds left, if you are speaking that long, I'll give you a little bit of a reminder just to say that there's 15 seconds remaining for time. So if it gets to that point. So the first person that I have signed up is Valerie Parker. So Valerie will start in a second, but rules for public comment, state your name, and then is it municipality, right? They don't have to say their full address, it's just the municipality?
Yeah,
Okay.
municipality.
So I'd ask those that are participating with public comment here to state your name, the municipality that you come from. And after you state your name and municipality, I'll start the timer from 2 minutes going down. So, like I said, we'll start off with Valerie Parker. So Valerie, are you available?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so could you please state your name and municipality?
Yes, Valerie Parker, and I'm actually representing the town of Plover. I am their clerk.
Okay, so feel free to start.
Okay. Yes, so the town of Plover, and I don't know if there's other board members online or not, but we are in support of modifying the zoning code to allow the storage containers to be located in pretty much all the districts and to allow them via conditional use permit. This way, it's not just a permitted right, but so they'll have to jump through a few hoops, but it would still give them the option to have the containers. And I guess a suggestion would be maybe as far as setbacks go, maybe we'd require them to be placed in a rear yard or not right in a front yard. I think that would be doable for some of our residents. Personally, I feel that the storage containers are a better option for people who can't afford to build a building to put their items in. It keeps everything out of their yard from being just set out in their yard and in a container and not looking disorderly. I guess that would be my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and I'll amend what I said earlier slightly. So I'll ask you to state your name and municipality, and then I'll say you're good to start. And then when you start speaking, I'll start the timer. So thank you, Valerie. Next up, I have Alicia Easker. And I think you're, or is Alicia by WebEx or in person?
I believe the intention was for online, but I do not see them online.
Okay. Well, what we'll do is we'll circle back at the end of the list and I'll ask if she joined us, or I'm assuming she joined us. So we will move on to Jody Easker.
I'm here, I'm back here.
Okay, so Jody, if you'd want to come up to the microphone there. And if you could do me a favor, could you test that it works, please? Perfect.
Hello.
Oh, all right. Thank you. State your name and municipality.
Jody Easker, Town of Plover.
All right, feel free to get started.
Yep, I'm just saying, I'm for the use of the shipping containers. I guess I don't see a harm in it. Yeah, like I said, like the lady before me said that it keeps your stuff, instead of having a big bunch of junk in your yard, you got something to throw it in and not spend a lot of money on the building. So, yeah, I'm just letting you know I'm for it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up, I've got Pete Marion. All right, I don't see a Pete here. Is there a Pete on WebEx?
There is not.
Okay. We'll circle back at the end for that individual. Next up, I've got Tony Kautza.
Also signed up possibly to speak, but I don't think he's online yet. So.
Okay, so I've got 3 there. Okay. Scott McRae.
I believe that would be the same thing. He's
Okay.
not online.
A Dale Leffel. There's a Dale and Pat. I've actually got 9 people signed up, but it's fine. It will still do 2 minutes. So,
Dale and Pat Level from Town of McMillan Township, Harrison County.
Sounds
And
good.
we're here to speak for the containers. What we do is, my wife does crafting, and she does a lot of them, and our garage is full, and with our age, it's a handy thing to keep them out of the house and yet next to the building where we can get in climate weather and stuff for a storage place for them. And what we do is, our home is on the highway and very accessible for visual, so we keep it looking very nice. We had them there for quite a few years now, and a lot of people, we have our business next door, have never noticed them. And they come into the business and said, "You do? Where do you store all these crafts?" And they said, "Well, right next to our house." And then they go out and look and say, "Oh yeah, you do have them there." But we try to get the color the same as our house, so they don't really even know that they're there. But so we're for the containers. Thank you.
thank you. So I guess I'll ask, did Pat want to speak? No. No? Okay.
It's the same.
Okay. Thank you. All right. And then Jeffrey Gunderson? Gunderson.
Right here.
So name and municipality, please.
Jeffrey Gunderson, Town of Plover.
Good to go.
Like I put 2 on early because I thought they were, everybody else around me's got them. You know, it's just that I found out that I had a different zone. You know, my little chunk of land has got a different zoning than the farmers, and, you know, the town of Harrison is right across the street from me. But I'm in favor of it. One, I painted mine, put them way in the back. You can hardly see them. If I got to put a tent around them or whatever to make them legal, I will, or I'll just get rid of them and sell them. You know what I mean? And move, because southern warmer weather, sure feeling better. But I'm in favor of them. And I have my little gun room in one, and I have one for just storage of tools and everything else. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to circle back, and I'll call again for an Alicia Easker.
I don't think she'll be commenting.
Okay.
She's just online listening.
Got it. Thank you. All right, Pete Marion. Okay. Tony Kautza. And Scott McRae. All right. That's all I got for public comment. Thank you, folks. We'll move on to 5, public comment for farmland preservation plan draft.
Again,
signed up.
nobody signed up for that, just per the public participation plan for that plan. We said we would post it as a separate public comment period on multiple ERC agendas, so, yeah.
Sure, and my understanding is that Kirsty will be providing some additional information from the open houses later?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so we're done with 4. Number 5, approval of the January 30th, 2024 committee minutes. Motion by Supervisor Unger, second by Supervisor Shafinsky to approve. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Moving on to 6, operational functions required by statute, ordinance, or resolutions. We've got 6A, 1 through 5. Okay. First thing is, ask everybody joining us in person, please mute your phone. If you're joining us electronically, please mute yourselves unless you are addressing the committee. Marathon County ERC is now meeting in public hearing on the location, plans, specifications, and purpose of following projects. All right, 6A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Norman and Margaret Borntrager, General Ag to Rural Estate, Town of Wien. 6A2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dennis and Deborah Jans, Rural Estate and General Agriculture to General Agriculture and Rural Estate, Town of Spencer. 6A3, petition of the Town of Plover, Marathon County, Wisconsin for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 17 Zoning Code. The petition of Shad Harvey, Conservation Planning and Zoning, Land Resources Manager for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 15 Private Sewage Systems. And 5, the petition of Shad Harvey, Conservation Planning and Zoning, Land Resources Manager for text amendment changes to the General Code of Ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 21 Non-Metallic Mining Reclamation Code. ERC members present, myself, Supervisor Longenhahn, Supervisor Drabeck, Supervisor Overbeck, Supervisor Seefeld, Supervisor Ritter, Supervisor Unger, and Supervisor Shafinsky. We also have staff present as well. The establishment of the ERC is required by law for purposes of administration of county ordinances and land conservation programs. The committee must follow state laws and local ordinances as written. The committee cannot change or ignore any part of the ordinances or state laws, must apply the laws as written. The purpose of this committee is to hear and decide on proposed ordinances and ordinance revisions, rezoning petitions, and provide direction on land conservation and planning programs. The ERC will give a full and fair hearing to any person applying for a rezone petition. A taped recording is being made of the meeting, which will assist with preparation of written hearing minutes. The committee is interested in hearing all pertinent comments and questions. Each hearing will be opened by reading the public notice and allowing staff to present a staff report, including evidence from any outside inspection. The applicant and anyone wishing to testify will be sworn in and allowed to give testimony. Witnesses will be called in the order of those first in favor, second opposed, and then third as interested may appear. The committee may ask questions of zoning staff and applicant. It is necessary that we set a reasonable time limit on individual statements on the overall length of the hearing. To promote orderly discussion, anyone wishing to present oral testimony or ask questions relating to the hearing should state your name and present your testimony or questions so it becomes part of the official record. We request you avoid repetition. Once the committee has all the necessary facts, the chairman will close the hearing, allowing no further testimony, and the committee will deliberate and decide in front of the public whether the applicant has met the standards of the ordinance. No additional testimony from the public is allowed during the deliberation. However, the committee may question staff for purposes of clarification. After a decision is made, the committee will proceed to the next hearing. Many of the decisions made by the committee are recommendations to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors, who will take up the matter at a future county board meeting. Please contact staff for more information regarding the county board process. All right. All that's taken care of. The committee will now hear the application of 6A1, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Norman and Margaret Borntrager, General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Wien. And we'll start by swearing in staff member for a staff report. So Garrett, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Go ahead, sir.
All right, this is for Norman and Margaret Borntrager, petition to rezone land, staff report March 5th, 2024, for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owner is Norman and Margaret Borntrager, 120916 Blackberry Road, Edgar, Wisconsin, 54426. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on Blackberry Road, just west of the intersection of Blackberry Road and Fairfield Drive. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Norman and Margaret Borntrager to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County Chapter 17 Zoning Code to rezone lands from GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate located in part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 29, Township 28 North, Range 4 East, Town of Wien. The area proposed to be rezoned from GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate is described as Lot 1 of the preliminary CSM, parcel number as shown. The Town of Wien Town Board met on February 9th, 2024. Today's Environmental Resources Committee is March 5th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation. On February 9th, 2024, the Town of Wayne Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable.
Any questions for Garrett? Okay, I had two. First of all, I have never seen a warranty deed included in our rezone packet. Why is that included in there?
So this rezone petition actually came through back in, I believe, October, and it was under the previous owner. He had split the two lots. If you look at the staff report here, Lot 1 and Lot 2 were combined as one lot, and they were splitting them off. Lot 1 is the one that Borntrager's now owned. The title company in error recorded the deeds. Therefore, the Register of Deeds has to record it, and the real property lister has to process it, making that parcel active. And by doing that, they created a violation for the zoning district. Lot 2, which remains general agriculture, is a legal lot because of its district size. Lot 1 is now an undersized lot for general agriculture. 10 acres is the minimum. This one is proposed to be 8, so it would fit the rural estate zoning district.
Okay.
So the warranty deed is to basically prove that Borntragers now own it and that they can lawfully sign the petition to rezone that property.
Okay. And then my second question is, I think if you just scroll up, you might, actually scroll down. I want to go to, or it says existing zoning district at the top and then general agriculture. Yeah. Well, either of those pages work. So it's kind of hard to tell. Maybe the next page is better. Yeah, because it's pulled up a little bit. What's up with the partial shading and the square and then the rectangle? What is that representing?
That's the future land use map. So what it's saying is that that area specifically, that area of that parcel is for single-family residential. And according to the comprehensive plan, I mean that the rest of that is to be used for cropland.
Okay.
Yep. So generally, you see this a lot in comprehensive plans. The what their use is doesn't exactly follow parcel lines. So right now,
Oh,
you
sure.
can see here how
That makes
that
sense.
small section is just for residential, and the
Yep.
rest of that parcel is for ag use.
Okay. Well, I mean, for real estate, it's still single family, so.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, that's all I got. Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you, Garrett. We'll move on. I guess before we get to the next part, do you see Tim Vreeland online at all, or no? No?
I do not believe he's
Nope.
online. No.
I don't see Tim here. So I'm going to call once for each one of these. So once for in favor, once opposed, and once for as interested. So anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 6A1, one call here, that's all. Sound like Gruber for those of you that watch the Milwaukee Bucks. That's for 6A1. Anybody wishing to speak in favor, calling once, please identify yourself at this time. Once and final. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A1, please identify yourself this time. Once and final call. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 6A1, once and final call, please identify yourself this time. All right. Seeing as no one wishes to testify no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on 6A1 closed. The committee will now deliberate on the application, apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. I think a motion to approve would be in order. Supervisor Seefeld.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion on behalf of Tim Vreeland to Norm and Margaret Borntrager to amend the General Code of Ordinance of Marathon County, Chapter 17, to rezone land from GA General Agriculture to RE Rural Estate in the town of Wayne, and approve the conclusions of law and move it to the county board.
Motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Sherfinsky. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. 6A2, back to Garrett.
All right. This is a petition for Dennis and Deborah Jans. Petition to rezone land, staff report March 5th, 2024 for the Environmental Resources Committee. The petitioner is Tim Vreeland at 6103 Dawn Street, Weston, Wisconsin, 54476. Property owners are Dennis and Deborah Jans, 100620 26 Road, Spencer, Wisconsin, 54479. The area proposed to be rezoned is located on 26 Road just west of the intersection of 26 Road and County Road V. The petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dennis and Deborah Jans to amend the General Code of Ordinance for Marathon County, Chapter 17 zoning code to rezone lands from RE Rural Estate and GA General Agriculture to GA General Agriculture and RE Rural Estate, described as part of Lot 1 of Certified Survey Map 5714-2132 and part of the southwest quarter of the southeast quarter of Section 19, Township 26 North, Range 2 East, Town of Spencer. The area proposed to be rezoned to GA General Agriculture is described as part of Lot 1, and the area proposed to be rezoned to RE Rural Estate is described as part of Lot 2 and Lot 3 of the preliminary CSM parent parcel pins as listed. The Town of Spencer Town Board met on February 13th, 2024. Marathon County Environmental Resources Committee is meeting today, March 5th, 2024 at 3 p.m. A legal advertisement was published in the Wausau Daily Herald. Notice of the zoning change request was also sent by regular mail to the adjacent property owners within 300 feet of the subject property. Town recommendation. On February 13th, 2024, the Town of Spencer Town Board recommended approval to Marathon County's Environmental Resources Committee. Staff recommendation. The rezone meets all the zoning district standards as it relates to size, frontage, access, and dimension. The rezone also appears to be consistent with the purpose and intent of the town's comprehensive plan and as indicated by the town resolution. Based on the information provided above, findings of fact, conclusions of law, and the town's recommendation, it appears the rezone request meets all the rezone criteria and standards for rezoning. Therefore, CPZ staff recommend that the Environmental Resources Committee recommend approval to the Marathon County Board of Supervisors. Should the rezone be approved by Marathon County Board of Supervisors, CPZ staff recommend that the town update its comprehensive plan to reflect the zoning change if applicable. I do believe Dennis Jans is online for any questions.
Okay. Any questions for Garrett? All right. Thank you, Garrett. All right. For item 6A2, anybody wishing to speak in favor of the proposed rezone, please identify yourself this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 6A2, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A2, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time after this. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A2, please identify yourself at this time. All right. Anybody wishing to speak as interested, I'm only going to call once for this one. Please identify yourself at this time. Okay. If no one else wishes to testify for this application, I'm now declaring the public hearing on 6A2, Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dennis and Deborah Jans, Rural Estate and General Agriculture to General Agriculture and Rural Estate, Town of Spencer, now closed. Committee will now deliberate on the application and apply the standards of the zoning ordinance. Yeah, I think a motion to approve would be in order here as well. Supervisor Sherfinsky.
I would like to make a motion to approve the petition of Tim Vreeland on behalf of Dennis and Deborah Jans, Rural Estate to General Agriculture and General Agriculture to Rural Estate, Town of Spencer, to approve that motion based on the recommendation of staff and the recommendation of the township.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Drabek. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, we are on to 6A3, petition of the town of Plover, Marathon County, Wisconsin for text amendment changes to the general code of ordinances for Marathon County chapters 17 zoning code. Now, before we get into the staff report, I realized what Lori was trying to describe to me earlier, and I goofed this up a little bit. So typically, folks, and I'll explain this to you all, when we have sign-ins on this sheet, it's usually for public comment, not for the public hearing. So if you'd like to testify for the public hearing, it's a little bit different. You'd have to come up to the microphone, and I'd have to take your name, and then I think I have to give you the oath, right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you'd like to do that, you certainly can. We're going to start with the staff report, and if you'd like to come up and participate in the public hearing, that's fine. I just want to let you all know that. I apologize for that. If you meant to participate in the public hearing, you still can. Otherwise, we definitely heard you during the public comment section as well. But if you want to participate in the public hearing, that's perfectly fine. All right. Staff report. Garrett, feel free to start.
Okay, so what we have included here is what we sent to the towns as well. So the town of Plover submitted a petition to amend Chapter 17 zoning ordinance to allow shipping containers as a conditional use in urban residential, low-density residential, and rural residential zoning districts. Currently, if you look at our table, currently they are inside the red box is the proposed change where they all become conditional use in those three districts. Currently, they are conditional use in rural estate. They are permitted uses in farm pres and general ag, conditional use in conservancy and rec districts, and then permitted use in all of our business and light industrial districts as well. So what the town of Plover is asking for on their petition is to allow them as a permanent use for an accessory structure in those residential districts. And as you can see on the screen, I'll try and blow that up for you. The proposed changes are in blue, and the red is the portions that will be eliminated. We also did receive several comments from towns. We sent a letter requesting comments from all of the towns at the beginning of this back in December, and then we reached out to them in the middle of February to provide further comment. And if you would like, I can share those comments.
Yeah, I think to be appropriate.
Give me just one sec here. So Townville Plain.
Also, Garrett, this is an aside to the public hearing, but could you please send this by email to us as well, please?
Yep, I can do that. Oh, let's see, where did it run to? Okay. So in this section, this is from the town of Eau Plaine from their minutes. Marathon County is considering a petition to amend their zoning ordinance to allow storage shipping containers to be used as permanent accessory structures with a conditional use permit. The town board members have no concerns with this. This is the town of Eau Plaine's comments. All right, and this is from the town of Elderon. The town of Plover has petitioned Marathon County zoning to change the zoning code to allow shipping cargo containers on residential properties. The town of Elderon will not approve of this change. Motion made by the chair. And I do believe I believe Shad was also given this from the town of Elderon as well. That's not going to work. Chad, do you mind pulling that up in your email?
Yeah, if Garrett can move on to the other ones, I'll pull up the email so we can share it and get it into a format that'll work on the computer.
All right, so this is for the town of Frankfurt. Garrett and Shad from Marathon County joined us to discuss conditional use permit, the town of Plover shipping containers, and to answer questions we had. Currently, right now, the town of Plover wants to allow conditional use permits for shipping containers because they believe it will lead to less junk in the yards and make it look nicer. Marathon County will not allow this until they hear feedback from the town. Shipping containers are currently allowed in agricultural, commercial, and temporarily use. The permit would allow permanent use on residential properties. All comments must be written form, submitted to Garrett. If a container moves or gets replaced, then it is non-conforming structure and grandfathered in as long as it stays in the same footprint as the previous container. If followed the previous rules, grandfathered in. I'm sorry, now not sure now where it went to. You can have restrictions on what like lettering. You can put on a rule that makes the outside a container blend in the surrounding area. If someone would want to live in it, it must meet the minimal housing code. No comment on animals living underneath shipping containers, no way to prevent it.
What was that comment about animals?
At the town board meeting, they asked us how we're going to prevent animals from going underneath the shipping container. That was a concern of theirs. Well,
Okay.
We informed them that we're unable to prevent that, I guess just like any other home.
Okay, well, continue.
Chairman Schopenhauer had a question on how our 2-acre lot requirement follows into this. The answer is that under land ordinance does not impact the conditional use. Said we would need to look at the comprehensive plan and pass ordinances to determine what our town rules are. So here's their opinion. Supervisor Brian Asplund is not in favor of allowing the shipping containers. He believes that it will lead to more junk instead of cleaning the yards. He is concerned that it will disturb the neighbors and be an eyesore. He also asked residents of Frankfurt what their opinions were, and they were not in favor based on the fact that they stick out too much and they are a terrible mess to clean up years later. Supervisor Jeff Specht had mentioned previously that he is in favor of shipping containers. He thinks it would help people store their belongings and clean up their yards. Chairman Craig Schemenauer believes they would be good if it doesn't become an eyesore to anyone in any direction. A resident, Steve Schneider, also not in favor of them. He does not like them off of a major highway. Overall, if they blend into the house, painted with no lettering, and in a reasonable location, the shipping containers would be okay. That was for the town of Frankfurt. We have a letter from the town of Hewitt Town Board. A discussion was held on shipping containers being used for storage containers under proposed zoning regulations. Also, clarification is needed if temporary or permanent. Clarification on what is considered a storage container. Can it be a semi-trailer or a box truck? Keith made a motion, second by Adam, to adjourn. So they're seeking more time. Town of Wayne,
More time to consider?
they would like more clarification.
Okay, thank you.
This is for the town of Knowlton. Supervisor Brown reviewed the proposed change to the Marathon County zoning code to allow shipping containers to be used as accessory buildings in residential zoning classes by conditional use permit. He also reviewed the recommendation from the town's planning and zoning committee to deny the proposed change. Brown stated that at the zoning committee meeting, 2 residents were in attendance and were opposed to containers, wouldn't be compatible with small subdivision lots in the residential zoning classes. Chairman Fight and Supervisor Brown both stated they received multiple calls from Knowlton residents asking the town to oppose a change. Zoning committee member Brimmer noted the difference in a conditional use permit versus a variance, and that the CUP would be much harder to deny. Morris Brown moved and seconded to recommend denial of the proposed change in Marathon County zoning code to allow shipping containers to be used as permanent accessory structures by conditional use permit in the rural estate, conservancy, urban residential, low-density residential, and rural residential zoning districts. This is for the town of McMillan. The town of Plover petition. They made a motion to approve the town of Plover petition. Fortson, Swenson, Gatto, everybody voted aye. All right, this is a written note from the clerk, Dennis Gonnering of the town of Spencer. It says at our January 9th meeting, the town board discussed permanent use of shipping storage containers as permanent accessory structures. The town of Spencer is in favor of approving them, but not in 1 acre to 1.5 acre subdivisions. See if I can get the town of Wayne's opened.
Internet Explorer.
Nope.
This one, I don't believe.
Okay. The Town of Wheaton Board discussed the container issue Monday, February 12th, 2024, during their monthly meeting and decided they would support the resolution to change the container rules. That's from Diane Drinzinger from the Town of Wheaton. This is additional comments that came from the Town of Elderon. Greetings, Shad. I have attached our January minutes of the Township of Elderon's vote on not allowing cargo containers to be used in Marathon County. We find the containers are in bad shape, making our rural area not so appealing. They have large print of Made in China printed on them. The towns are not allowed to tax the containers where a storage building would be taxed. If we do not have some regulations on these containers, they would possibly show up anywhere on people's property, and we would not be able to control how many containers they could own. Our belief that allowing these containers is opening up a can of worms. This will not make our townships or county look very appealing for those who would like to move into our area. We are asking the board to keep the restrictions on these containers. And those are the comments that we received.
And to be clear, these comments are all in regards to it being a permitted use or a conditional use?
The conditional use. This is what was sent, their comments based on what we sent them here in their town packet.
Okay. So that's all you got, Garrett, right?
Yes.
Sorry, okay. Any questions for Garrett? I know I've been asking him periodically, and I apologize getting out of order, but Supervisor Seefeld.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Garrett, so this would be for just zoned with Marathon County, correct?
Correct. This only applies in county zone towns.
So now, because I'm involved with the town of Eldon pretty, and I read that before it got here. Anyway, so when we went through this last year, all of a sudden, all the containers in the town of Eldon had to leave. People were not happy. So if this goes the way we write it now, are they allowed to bring the containers back in, or do they have to go through the town board?
They have to go through the conditional use process again.
Conditional use process.
Correct. So
Okay.
if this is the process that the committee decides to forward to county board and county board approves, this is the process that everybody who would want one would have to go through, depending on what their district is. If they're these smaller residential districts, then they would have to, yes. Through Board of Adjustment, yes.
Board of Adjustments, okay.
Yep, the
Okay.
town does get the opportunity to make a resolution and comment on the application for a conditional use permit. But I believe it's Wisconsin Act 67 that states that if an applicant meets the standards for a conditional use permit, that the Board of Adjustment is required to grant it. There is a 30-day appeal process that can be started after that.
Okay, because this is going to open up a can of worms, I got a feeling. But, so if, say now I went and I have to go through the conditional use permit, it's
Correct.
30 days to approve the permit, correct?
No, it works very similar to to like a rezone. You submit
okay,
the application, we have to do the public hearing notices and everything like that.
Right.
And then you'll have your hearing in front of the Board of Adjustment. And then after that, your conditional use permit is approved. Now, the applicant takes up the liability that if that decision were to be appealed and overturned, they take up the liability that if that container is placed, that it would have to be removed. Yep. Another note with the conditional use permits, towns can make recommendations for conditions as well. It's not just staff or the Board of Adjustment. They can make the recommendations to provide some feedback to the Board of Adjustment.
And then it would be up to the Board of Adjustment,
Correct.
correct? Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Looking at some of the documentation here, BA2, storage shipping containers used as permanent accessory structures may be required to be screened from roads and/or adjacent properties, and it goes on to describe, how that might be done. I guess I've got a couple of concerns there. One of which, who does the requiring? May be required, but it doesn't say by whom. The other thing that comes to mind is that I can envision some of these units being used to house, let's say, a small boat trailer, where, and of course, given the geometry, you would want access to that front side where the doors are. That would be incompatible, let's say, with a screen or a hedge. So can you elaborate on that, please?
I can elaborate, but I believe I need to be sworn in.
Chad, do you sort of tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, go ahead, sir.
So that number 2 provision that you're talking about is currently already in our code. That's there. Honestly, a lot of the times we get in situations where if there's a container we feel is going to cause a conflict among 2 different land uses or something like that, if somebody's using it there's a business property and say another zoning district like a residential district next to it, the zoning administrator, which would be myself, and my team, we can kind of determine if a screening, such as a fence or a hedge, blocking the view of the container would be necessary to make it compatible among the 2 districts. So in this case, if it's non-compatible because there's a residential district, you have a business, but you feel a screening fence in between would help the property owner, the residential. This section of our code does give us the ability to say, let's put a fence up here so that this person can't, it's not obstructing their view or something like that.
Makes it more palatable.
Correct.
Other questions for staff? Supervisor Overbeck.
I have a question. If the shipping container is, I guess, enclosed or encapsulated in another structure, used as a structure and built around, does that still have to go through the conditional use permit? If it's not, the exterior of it is not exposed?
Right. No, it would not have to go through that process. It would be, the outside of that would be permitted as a regular accessory structure, and then the shipping container is just placed inside of that. There are a few instances where zoning regulates the use inside of a building. In that case, that's not one that we would regulate.
Supervisor Trapek, no dumb questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just being curious here. These open from the inside and the outside, or just from the outside? Because I'd sure hate to hear of somebody getting locked in.
I believe they only open from the outside.
So, but that could be a condition of, that they should be open from both sides, possibly? Is that possible even? And I'm just throwing that out there.
It could be recommended. I'm not sure if it's an achievable one. I'm not sure how that would work.
That one would be a little difficult in the sense where, like, for example, if somebody's building an accessory structure right now, we don't generally make sure that the doors, we don't make sure that the doors open both ways or that you can get out from the inside with an accessory structure. So this would likely be handled in the same sense. It would be up to the property owner, in a sense, to make sure that the use of that structure is designed for what they would want to use it for.
I get that. I'm just wondering because usually if you build in a building out there, you put windows or something in, where this would not have that, right? You should have, like, another way to get out is just what I was wondering.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Supervisor Overbeck brought up a good question, which caused me to have an additional thought. So you take one of these shipping containers. I can also see where somebody could decide that they were going to take the shipping container itself and then apply some type of, let's say, exterior plywood around the outside of the shipping container. They throw up a very quick, simple roofing structure. Basically, they dress it up so that it fits into whatever their lot, their home, looks like. So they've kind of disguised it, but they've used the shipping container as a ready-made structure. How does that come into all of this? How does that play?
Yeah, we believe that it would be treated the same as an accessory structure, because now you've basically built the casing around that shipping container to create the shell, and then you've placed a shipping container inside of it.
Well, just to be clear, there's nothing attached to the ground on the shell that I'm envisioning. It would be
Right,
completely attached to the side of the shipping container, just so we're clear.
Yeah, so our zoning code also allows us, so for example, I'm sure everybody's seen the structures that people saw on the side of the road that are kind of on skids. You can move them into a place. We actually do require zoning permits for those as well, so that would be handled as an accessory structure, just like that.
So I think another question that gets brought about because of this is when you look at a structure, do you look at intent as far as what it's meant to be, or how do you determine that, right? Because if I think of a storage container, people are storing boat trailers, maybe lawn equipment, something like that. How far does it go until somebody might be, and I've heard about this, not a long time, but I've heard about it, just this morning in a conversation, but what happens if somebody starts living in it, right?
If you want. Go for it.
So
I don't want to kick that can, but I'm gonna.
when it becomes a structure used for living, it's subject to the Uniform Dwelling Code, and they have to prove the engineering of that structure. And it has to be inspected and meet the requirements of the Uniform Dwelling Code.
So that's when the building inspector gets involved, right?
Correct.
Then you have things like, well, do you have a sanitation system? And-
Correct. Then we would treat it as a house. If you're gonna use it as a house, we'd have to permit it as a house then. And then, they would have to get their sanitary system put in, and then the building inspector would make sure that it meets the Uniform Dwelling Code standards as well.
You do treat it as intent, right? With something like this, you would treat it as what the use would be then, right?
Right.
Okay.
If I could add something as well. So right now, in our code, we have a table of permitted uses. And apart from the amendments of them, if this were to go through, be allowed by conditional use in the residential districts, the permitted use is actually permitted use of storage/shipping container as an accessory structure. So if somebody were to live in it, other than the UDC code that he just referenced, the living in a shipping container is not an allowable use. It would only be allowable use for personal storage and accessory structure, like a normal garage would be. It wouldn't be allowed to be used for like a cabin or a living structure.
Sure. Okay. Supervisor Overbeck.
I think the way you got to think about this is that storage container is actually just a structure or a frame, and whatever's done with it tells the story. I mean, I've seen, there's designs out there that make these in, stack them and do all types of things and build structures around them, over them. And I think that's the way you got to think about it, is they're a very good start to something. And as a storage container, I think they're actually better than some sheds because they're sealed. And that's one of the positives of that when you get into a rural environment or whatever. I think what most people are afraid of is the appearance of it, that it's rusted, has graffiti on it, or doesn't fit in, a box. But in reality, you can do many things, with even landscaping around them or whatever that can turn them into fairly good structures and better structures with, sealed floors and whatever that don't have rodents and whatever living in them. So I think they're an alternative that should be looked at as far as a positive thing. It's just, what is the appearance of it and how does it look within the landscape that it's going into?
Just to, sorry, Chair Langenhahn, just to speak to Mr. Oberbeck's comment there is the opportunity for the committee to propose other standards that we could bring back to the applicant to see if they are okay with adding to their petition or if they don't want to add them. And then that conditional use permit allows for the opportunity to place conditions on things like appearance and location and things like that as well.
You have a follow-up then?
Yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and then Supervisor Ritter.
Just a quick thing on appearances. I could create a metal building that looks almost like a shipping container just by using the panels from Menards and framing. So there's not much difference there other than what those are used, I guess, structures, and it's just what they look like. So I think it's important to look at that.
So I want to highlight one thing here. So technically with the public hearing where we're at right now, so we're technically accepting testimony from Shad and Garrett right now. So the deliberation part, we're going to do that after we've accepted all the testimony. That's fine. This is going to be a good discussion. I can already tell. But let's, at the moment right now, let's focus on asking questions to whoever's testifying. Okay. So Supervisor Ritter. Sounds good. Okay. Supervisor Drabek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering if we would say yes to this as a committee here, doesn't the towns have the right to say no or not? And not even on the.
No, not at this point.
They are?
If the
Okay.
committee recommends approval, the county board, and it gets approved, then it goes into effect in all 18 county-zoned towns.
All right. Thank you.
Supervisor Shafinsky.
Okay. So one final question from my perspective, and I'm looking at this table. The first line is accessory building structures and uses. And then down the third line, we have permanent use of storage shipping containers as an accessory structure. I guess I'm wondering why we're even differentiating. And I think Supervisor Overbeck, addressed that to some extent. It's fear of the appearance. But I'm wondering why it would be any different than any other. Why would we treat it any different than any other accessory structure? It's, at least as it starts out, it's going to be as solid as anything else that's potentially put up as a shed or accessory structure. So I don't see the need to differentiate.
I'm unfamiliar with why it's separated.
Well,
I just know that in our ordinance now it is separated.
I'm going to save my comment for later, but I do have a comment to that, so I'm going to try and remember it. Okay. I'm making promises. Okay. Other questions for Garrett and Shad? Supervisor Drabek.
How many towns have responded actually?
I believe we have somewhere in the area of 7 or 8. And then obviously the town of Plover with their position would be the 9th.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Good question. That's one that I didn't remember. Okay. Anything else? All right. So we're good there for staff. Now, like I said, I know we took public comments and a lot of folks talked about this item under public comment, but if you'd like to speak to this item, we're on 6A3. This is the town of Plover petition for text amendment change. If you'd like to speak for the public hearing, now would be the time. So if you're over WebEx, I can swear you in. If you're joining us in person, you can come to the microphone at the back of the room. I can swear you in. So anybody wishing to speak in favor of, what item are we on here? 6A3, please identify yourself at this time.
I see Val is raising her hand on the WebEx.
Val, you wanted to speak, right?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, Valerie Parker, representing the town of Plover as the clerk. My address is 230801 County Road Y, Burnham Wood, although it's town of Plover, 54414. And obviously we are in support of it.
I
And
just
comment was
gotta, I gotta swear you in real quick, okay, Valerie? So
Oh,
if you'd
sorry.
raise your right hand. So do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay,
I
go
do.
ahead, thank you.
Okay. Yes. So is it possible for a municipality, let's say the ones that are not in favor, is it possible for them to put in place stricter regulations on the storage containers over what the county puts in place?
So because we're in the public hearing part right now, we can't do back and forth for question and answer. But what we can do is we can take that question, and when we get to the deliberation process, we can talk about it. So if you have any other questions like that, we can note them now, and then we can talk about them during deliberations. So did you have other questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay, so staff, did you get a chance to write that down? Okay, so we noted your question, Valerie, thank you. Okay, any questions for Valerie, though? All right, seeing and hearing none, thank you. All right, anybody else wishing to speak in favor of item 6A3, please identify yourself this time. I'll call one more time after this. Oh, yes, sir, if you want to. So I apologize, it's our rules. First name and address, now I got to do name and address.
Dale Uppel, Dale Uppel, 203, State Highway 97, Marshfield, Wisconsin, Town of McMillan. Speaking favorite, Mike.
Raise your right hand. Okay, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes. I
That's
do.
the last hoop, I swear. Go ahead.
Okay, speaking favorite, my first question was, with our, speaking for it before our comments, will that pertain to the hearing now, or do we have to reinstate it again?
We will take that question and we'll talk about it in deliberations.
Okay, but either way, but I'll reinstate now that we're for it, okay? Fair enough?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. All right. Anybody else wishing to speak in favor of 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. Call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of item 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. All right. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. I'll call one more time. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. Seeing and hearing none, I'll call once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 6A3, please identify yourself at this time. Okay. Seeing as no one else wishes to testify for the text amendment changes from the town, or text amendment change for Town of Plover for item 6A3, I'm now declaring the public hearing on the item now closed. So, committee will now deliberate. So we have the question from Valerie Parker. I don't know if staff, if you could comment on that at all, that'd be.
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, can a town have a stricter zoning regulation on shipping containers if they're in county zoning? If you're in county zoning, you are under county zoning, so they would have to abide by our zoning code. They wouldn't be able to restrict the zoning of a shipping container. There are some powers, and to be honest, I would consult legal counsel on this one, but there are some provisions with licensing. Towns can have different licensing ordinances. It's not considered a zoning ordinance. I don't know if that would apply in this case. But for example, they can have, they do liquor licensing, they can license other things. So that could be something they potentially look into. But as far as zoning standards goes, they would, if they're under county zoning, they would have to follow county zoning.
And that would include, I think there's two avenues there, right? So there's the idea that they would be just an allowable use in the code, and then a town that might not want them in their community might want a stricter regulation and want to regulate them. But then conversely, if under county zoning, they wouldn't be allowed, and the town would want a standard that would allow them, right? There's sort of two avenues there.
Right. So right now you have towns that want them and towns that don't want them. So you're right. There'd kind of be two avenues there.
Yep. Okay. Supervisor, well, and I'm going to say this. Okay. So you go, and then I don't want to bury the lead on something too much farther in the conversation, but why don't we take your comments and I have something to add. And Supervisor Ritter, you're in the queue.
Just on a question, on the restrictions for a township, wouldn't they have the ability through the conditional use process of approving that to put conditional uses? Put requirements on that approval? Or would that be through the county doing that?
So I can address that as well. So the Board of Adjustments itself can put conditions on the conditional use. The towns do get an opportunity to provide input and recommendations. So whether or not those recommendations are put on the permit or not is completely up to the Board of Adjustments. But for example, if a town wanted, they felt that the location of a shipping container that was going into in for conditional use was in an inappropriate location, they could recommend to the Board of Adjustments to put as a condition on that conditional use it be located somewhere else on the property. They can do that. The Board of Adjustment may say, yeah, we agree with that, and we'll add that as a condition. They may say, we don't agree with that, and it wouldn't be put on a condition. But the town does get an opportunity to provide a recommendation to that board.
All right, I'm going to make a comment, and then we'll go to Supervisor Ritter. So here's I think we should have discussion today, but I would actually like to reopen this hearing next month, primarily because in my district, I have 3 towns. 2 of them are under their own zoning, and one of them actually happens to be a county zone town. The county zone town told me this morning that their planning commission will be meeting this evening to talk about this. So I know that in Shad's letter, they were supposed to, was it February 28th, they were supposed to get their comments to you? And then if they weren't able to do that, they were supposed to let you know that when they would be meeting in March or something like that?
Yeah, it was essentially, they were supposed to give us notice if they wouldn't make it, and they intended to, yep.
Yeah, well, they told me that this morning. So, and like I said, the planning commission is meeting tonight. I would like to hear from that town because I represent that town and they are county zoned. So what I would like to do is have some discussion today, talk about some things that might be changed as part of that amendment, and reopen the hearing next month so we can accept some more testimony. So that's where I'd like us to go. But for the people joining us today, I didn't want to give off the impression that we're definitely going to have a decision today, because I think we have some more fact gathering to do, or additional input to collect, I should say. So, okay, Supervisor Ritter and then Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kind of echoing on Supervisor Oberbeck's comments, and Shad, that's kind of where I was going. I sit on the Board of Adjustment, and that's what we do. We take this as on an individual basis. So, we might have somebody whose property is a house in the middle of the trees. Well, I'm not going to tell them they got to put some kind of structure around it if nobody can see it but them. If they want to have a rusty container out their window, that's their business. But there are areas, and I believe we did a shipping container for a trap club, and that was one of the conditions, was they had to keep it painted and looking nice. So I will be supporting this just because the towns can have a recommendation to the Board of Adjustment, so they'll have their input. We look at them on an individual basis. We can even restrict the number of them if it comes up. So just the fact that it'll be going under that microscope at that point of the conditional use process, I don't see any problems with this.
Granted, I would just add, and again, staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way it's presented, so the way it's presented currently, right? That's what we're talking about today, the stuff in green there. That says conditional, right?
Correct.
The request was,
For conditional use, yes.
the request is for conditional.
Correct.
Okay. Supervisor Stravinsky.
Thank you. So a couple questions, and in general, I agree. I am supportive of the idea. Part of it is I look back at the possibility of using something like this, and one of the things that we're forgetting or maybe not talking about is the fact that there may be accessory structures, garages, frame-built sheds, whatever, that have been allowed to deteriorate. They're dilapidated. They haven't fallen over yet, but they're sitting there. You know, so we have all this fear of something that may look a little different. But the other thing that I think that comes up is clearly from the feedback that you got from all the various towns, the feedback that we've gotten today, there's a lot of, you know, there are two very different camps. There's definitely a group of towns that would be, no, we want no part of this. There are other towns that have no problem with it. Go ahead. We may want to impose some restrictions to just keep the property values, keep everything neat and tidy. And if I understood correctly, I'm going to ask staff a question. You talked about the conditional use permit. I think I heard you say that if the requirements are met, state law largely presumes that you are going to say yes. You have to say yes to a conditional use permit. Is that correct?
Correct. So if they meet the standards of that conditional use permit, the board's duty is to approve it. But adding conditions onto it is a tool that the board has to help mitigate some issues that come from whatever's happening around that. Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So if we amend the zoning court text, to some extent we'd be locking the towns into having to say yes, but yes, perhaps with these conditions attached. So my question is this: from a legal perspective, do we have a way of not taking a stand? Can we have a way of putting together ordinance text that would allow the towns to make their own decision on this? Because clearly we have very strong feelings on both sides.
I think when it comes to standards like that makes it very hard to regulate in a uniform manner as a county zoning standpoint, because we would be regulating. We'd have different regulations essentially to enforce in different areas. So I think that would be one of the biggest challenges with that.
It might be a little problematic too from not from the staff perspective, but from a resident's perspective too, as far as determining what would be allowable, right? Because if it's town zone versus county zone, there's one layer, but then under that, there's another layer too of whether or not the town would allow it under county zoning. So I like the idea because it gives more, use the word, liberty to the town that they can make that decision themselves. I think it's just the logistics, you know.
I can understand the logistics issues. I guess one of the you talked about uniformity, and quite honestly, from a county perspective, I see absolutely no need for uniformity on this issue. What somebody does in the town of Wayne versus what somebody does in the town of Spencer, I'm sorry, I don't see why we would be terribly concerned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. These shipping containers, so I put up a 20 by 30 shed. That's assessed value, correct? These containers have no assessed value, correct?
That is not correct.
That's not correct.
Correct.
Okay.
I spoke with Terry Vosberg of Hoffman Appraisals. He's the town assessor for the town of Stettin, and I believe also the town of Hamburg. The way that assessments work, according to Mr. Vosberg, is that the way assessors look at structures on a property is what value does it add to that property. So say if that structure is worth $1,000 and the mill rate in that town is 17 per thousand, $17 per $1,000 of value, it's taxed at that. He did mention that that will change depending on where that structure is located. If it's in a scenario, the one that he used is that if it's in a residential area where it's a very high dollar subdivision, $500,000, $750,000, $1 million homes, does that shipping container really add a lot of value to that property? He said most likely not. But if it's in a rural area where it's a hunting area, you have a small cabin there, and then you have the shipping container there, that could add a greater amount of value because its uses are a little more, I guess is the way he put it was it adds that greater amount of value because of where it's located, I guess is where I'm trying to go with that. So it's very differentiated between what property it's on.
Well, you're looking at in town versus out of town. So I put a $750,000 house up in the town of Elron or wherever, and I build a shed alongside and put a shipping container behind, but that shipping container is not going to add value to the house?
It's up to the assessor.
Up to the assessor, okay.
Right. He just explained that is the scenario of typically how assessments will work.
Okay.
It's not, the way he said it is, it's not like, oh, you have a building that's this big, it's worth this much. It's very much dependent on the property, location, things like that.
Okay, because I'm going to get asked a lot of questions when I get back home.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just wondering, since you haven't heard back from all the towns, the ones that have not responded, can you remind them again to
Absolutely.
maybe get us something back?
We did remind them, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, I called all 18 towns clerks and either left messages or spoke to them and explained that we needed feedback from them. We did receive some of it, some of the ones that we were missing, but of course, we have not received from everybody yet.
Well, if the committee allows it today, and I would please ask you to support the idea of reopening the hearing next month, because I would really like to hear back from that town in my district. If you could send out another reminder and say that the ERC will be reopening the hearing in April and accepting additional testimony. I think that would be great. Also, thank you for calling all those clerks. That probably couldn't be done in 10 minutes. So thank you. Supervisor Stravinsky? He's tapped out. All right. Supervisor Stravinsky.
Thank you, Chairman. I guess my question is, are we looking at a motion to table? Is that what you're looking for?
I don't know the answer to that. I was thinking about that on the way in today. Does staff know by chance? We've reopened hearings in the.
Yes, I believe we postponed with the.
Okay. Well, I mean, even if I know there's that wrinkle in Robert's rules about whether or not it's postponed or tabled. Regardless, I'm going to place it on next month's agenda. So it's not like it's going to get postponed indefinitely. I mean, you've got my word. It's recorded. I'm going to put it on the agenda. So, but yeah, we can postpone it and just reopen the hearing next month. Motion, yeah, would be in order.
Okay. I so move that we postpone until the April meeting.
Yep. So a motion has been made. So I know Supervisor Seefeld had a comment yet, but we can do it. You're done? I'm done. Okay, I just want to make sure everybody got their chance. You had one more comment? So Supervisor Stravinsky, would you mind holding that motion for a second? Okay, Supervisor Overbeck, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Chair. One thing I'd probably like to hear from the towns would be what minimum standards would they like to see set for the storage containers, such as all one color paint or something like that, that makes it, I guess, so it doesn't go to a standard that would offend other people.
Sure. And open that question up maybe to, well, definitely open that question up to those that have responded as well. Maybe Eldron would have additional comments, right? Yeah. All right. So I know somebody's raising the hand in the back. I can't take questions now because this is the committee part, the deliberation part. If you want to submit a comment to staff afterward, that's fine. That can get back to us. I didn't want to ignore you, but this is, sure. Okay. All right. Anything else for that? Okay. Supervisor Stravinsky, you had a motion?
I move that we postpone consideration of the shipping container amendment until the April meeting.
Sure. Sounds good. Okay, motion is made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Thank you to the members of the public that attended and brought your testimony today. We appreciate it. All right. Moving on to, wait, we're not done with public hearings yet. 6A4. Shad's up again. We've got text amendment changes to general code ordinances for Marathon County Chapter 15, private sewage systems. So you're still sworn in. You should be good to go.
Awesome. All right. So today is the public hearing for the Chapter 15 Private Sewage System Code. We've been working on this a while. I just wanted to give the committee kind of a background of what's all been done as far as public outreach for this. So we kind of started these discussions in October of 23. In December, we brought it back. We had some draft language that was drafted for this. We also posted it on our website. In January, we sent out a memo to towns for input based on that draft. We did not receive any input from any towns except for the town of Gunther, and I'll go through that in a little bit. We also received our DSPS, the state's certification, basically them signing off on our draft, saying that they were okay with it, and it followed the procedures correctly. Also, February 21st, we held an open house at Conservation Planning and Zoning to allow for towns to come in and talk to us about it. We did not have anybody show up for that public hearing, or not public hearing, open house. So nobody gave input, and then we're here today. So I think the easiest way to do this would essentially be to go just amendment by amendment, and then I'll kind of chime in where Gunther had just a comment. That way you guys can kind of see it as they read it. But we'll use this. We'll use this amendment table here. This is the same amendment table that you guys have seen at previous meetings. Nothing has changed since those, but just kind of, since this is the public hearing, we'll kind of run through each amendment just to make sure that you guys understand what's going on, and if anybody that's listening in would like to make comment as well. So the first amendment was essentially the definition of committee. We just reinforced that the Environmental Resource Committee is the designated committee for this ordinance. It just better identifies the oversight committee. The second amendment, our code references public sewer quite a bit in it, but we didn't have a definition of public sewer, so we wanted to make sure that we did actually define public sewer to make our code a little bit more clear, so there wasn't any confusion of what is considered a public sewer. A sewer system, other form of sanitary system approved by the State Department of Natural Resources and maintained by a public agency authorized to operate such systems. Availability is determined by the agency authorized to operate such system. So that's the definition that we chose to make that section or that term a little bit more clear in our ordinance. The third amendment, again, is in the definition section. It's under a sanitary permit, a county sanitary permit. The only change to the definition is we added repair because our county does require a sanitary permit for a repair. So we just wanted to make sure that was in the definitions. This was actually one of the areas that Gunther had a comment to. In our ordinance, we also have minor repairs. Those are also defined. The Plan Commission actually called me and said that they would potentially like to see except for minor repairs in this definition. Seeing that this is the definition for sanitary permits and minor repairs is already defined in our ordinance, I don't necessarily know if it's the best idea to include that in the definition of sanitary permit for county, just to kind of keep those separate so we don't kind of cause some confusion there.
So what's the difference between a repair and a minor repair?
So a repair is where a sanitary permit would be needed, would be like a component of the system, like if your tank needs a replacement or if your whole sewer line needs to be redone. A minor repair on your tanks, you have the risers that come up. That would be a riser. That'd be a minor repair. It doesn't require a permit. You can replace your risers.
Okay.
The pump that's in your septic tank, if that goes out, you don't need a permit. That's a minor repair. A plumber can do without a permit. So the minor repairs are kind of the areas that can fail and be replaced easily without much, I don't want to say much thought because there is also quite a bit of thought that goes into it. But also, for example, if you had a break in your sewer and you just needed a small sewer repair versus the replacement of the whole thing, that would be minor versus a standard repair.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Sanitary permit, we also just included replacement or repair in there, just to make it a little bit more clear that if you're replacing or some repairs, anything that's like a distribution system. So if you have a drain field, if you're replacing any of the distribution components, that also requires a state permit as well. So we wanted to make sure that replacement and repairs were reflected in that definition. The number 5. So what we wanted to do here is we're just again adding clarity to when a POUTS is required. So all structures or premise on the county that are permitted or permanently and internally intended for human habitation or occupancy, which are provided with interior plumbing. The reason we added interior plumbing is if any structure has interior plumbing, there needs to be a plan for where that waste goes. So that right there would, if you have a shop with a sink inside, that sink waste needs to be directed somewhere, which would be to a POUT. We've had cases where it just wasn't as clear. It kind of paints a little bit better picture if you have with interior plumbing. Number 6. So this was this was already in our code. It was just in a different section. This standard before any land division, which would separate any POUTS component from a parcel where the structure served by those components is located, documents, and then it lists the documents referencing a section in our code may be required. Essentially, this is if somebody was to want to split a parcel, or they do split a parcel and it cuts their septic system off from their structure that it's serving, this allows us to have them get things in place like a maintenance easement or adjust the property line to help prevent in the future conflicts that come up if the neighboring property buys the land but won't let the other neighbor come on to fix their system. They could have some issues. So this allows us to do this. And again, this was already in our code. It was just not in the proper place, so we decided to move it to a better location. Limitations. this was, we added, this kind of goes with the next Amendment 8, but this was just to include Amendment 8 in the reference in the code. And I'll go over Amendment 8. This is probably the bigger amendment that we have in our code. We wanted to add a pathway in our code to allow for emergency holding tank replacements. The reason for this, one, the state did give us direction. If, let's say you have your sanitary system at your home fails, the tank collapses. This would allow for an individual to come to us and have an expedited permit process for a temporary holding tank. That would get something in place to catch the waste and make sure it's managed properly, with the expectation that after that's in place, they'll work with us to make sure they get the proper system installed. But this at least gives us, like I said, an expedited pathway, so somebody's not sitting there for months at a time with a failed system, and we can work with them and not get in a situation where we're telling them, yes, go do the work without having a permit. One of the reasons behind this is when you do have enforcement cases and you tell somebody, yeah, go ahead, do that work without a permit, when you go and somebody starts work knowing they don't need a permit, if you went to court, the court could potentially ask, have you ever issued a permit for somebody to put in or have you ever gave permission to somebody to put in a system without a permit? And then the answer to that, if you said yes, it could make the enforcement process hard, making them say, well, then they did nothing wrong. Your fine doesn't, or your fine or what needs to happen is altered in some way. So this gives us a legal way to kind of, like I said, have that expedited pathway.
I think Supervisor Drabeck has a question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you talking like an above-ground tank that would be just brought in temporarily, like a truck or something, or are you talking a tank in the ground?
So most of the time, this would be a tank in the ground. A lot of times what happens is if somebody, let's say their property will support a mound system or a conventional, they'll put in a septic tank and they'll just cap the end and use that as their holding tank until they can get the rest of the system essentially installed. So it's not always, it's usually one in the ground. I haven't really seen too many above ground just because, I'll be honest, a lot of the times these emergency ones happen, it's in the middle of winter, and above ground holding tanks have some different issues when it comes to the weather and the cold weather. So most of the time these are underground.
I guess my concern was if you put a tank in the ground, then they can use that tank for the mound system eventually. Am I correct?
Correct. That's
what I wanted to
ultimately
make sure.
the intention. Yep. All right. So the Ninth Amendment, which is on page 6, building sewers for new structures and additions. We just changed structures or additions instead of construction. In this case, it just adds a little bit of clarity that in our code, construction sometimes refers to construction of the POUT system, and it sometimes refers to it as structure of the home or building. And we just wanted to make sure and add clarity to this section that this section was actually referring to structures and the additions onto structures versus the POUT system itself. The Amendment 10 was just removing a non-existent code reference that was in our code. Amendment 11 was to add a code reference for some clarity. This is just kind of relaying it back to our code, so it kind of flows a little bit better when you're reading. It leads you to the correct section. This Amendment 12 was that area we had talked about before, about land divisions and requiring the stuff. That was just moving it from that section to a different section. Amendment 13, again, this is just another code reference that no longer exists in our code, so it doesn't make sense to keep it in there, so we were just correcting that. Permit expiration renewal, Amendment 14. We just wanted to make sure that the word construction, again, had some clarity behind it, so we clarified it by just adding a pouts, so we know we're talking about the sanitary system at that point.
I think Supervisor Drabeck had another question.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I was just wondering, the wording there at the end, I think it's supposed to be prior, but it's
Oh.
not really. Yeah, I just wanted
Yeah.
to make sure we had that.
Thank
I
you.
thought you were
Yeah.
maybe checking to see if we read or not.
Well, thank you. Yeah, well, I'll make a note of that. All right, so on Amendment 15, again, there was a historic reference that we just removed and replaced. Amendment 16, pumping of a septic or holding tank shall be done by a certified septic service operator. We wanted to make sure that we included holding tanks in there. There is a distinction between the two. Septic tank is the one when you have a distribution field that basically holds the solids in the sludge. Holding tank collects everything, so we wanted to make people aware there's still a lot of individuals that think holding tanks, you can pump the liquids off, but that's actually not legal. It has to be done by a certified operator, so we just wanted to make sure that was clear in our code as well. Amendment 17 in power and duties, we just replaced it with the correct code reference, state statute reference. It was incorrect in there. It was amended at one point in time and wasn't caught, so we just replaced that with the correct reference. Powers and duties, what we did is direction from the state indicated we're not allowed to prevent a contractor from completing work on a different location based on a permit they had or they were working on for another property owner. So essentially, our current ordinance as it sits states if a plumber doesn't complete a pout system on someone's property, the county has the power to say we're not going to issue a sanitary permit that you're going to work on until you get this one fixed or you finish this system. We actually don't have the power to do that, one, because the sanitary permit, while the plumber installs it, the permit is actually to the owner. So if there was another violation on that property that the owner had, like say there was a zoning violation, we could prevent that sanitary permit from being issued until the zoning violation was corrected. But we can't use it to prevent a contractor from picking up a permit and working on it on another site. And then also, our code referenced Land Conservation and Zoning Committee, but that is now we have the ERC now that is overseeing this, so we did correct that. So direction from the state on 19 was, this is just kind of to reiterate that a permit needs to be issued prior to the installation of pouts. We kind of went over that a little bit earlier, but we did adjust our code to reflect that. And that's what I have for chapter 15. If there's any other questions, I can definitely take those. I can bring up the actual draft ordinance if you would like to see that. It's just essentially the strikes are still in red and the additions are in blue as well.
I think we're good, Shad. Thank you, though. Any other questions, comments? If not, I'm thinking you're looking for a motion to approve to send these up to the board?
That'd be correct, yep.
Okay. Anybody like to make that motion? Supervisor Shafinsky.
I will so move that we approve and move to the county board for their approval.
Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. All right. What's the next one you got? Is it 17?
21.
21. Thank you.
All right, so this one's probably going to be the longest one out of all of them. There's a shocking 3 amendments. Let me scroll down here. We'll go again. I'll just give a quick background on this one. It's very similar to chapter 15, but There are a few slight differences. Again, in October, we began discussions just saying our intent to update this chapter. We did have our draft done a little bit sooner on this one. In November, the draft was completed, and we had sent it to DNR for their approval. We did receive their approval that same month for this Chapter 21, the non-metallic mining reclamation code. In December, we did post it to our website. In January, at the same time that we sent out for Chapter 15, we sent it for the towns for input. We didn't receive any comments. We did receive a few calls just inquiring about it and what we were looking to do, but no comments on any adjustments or anything like that. And again, February 21st, we had the open house. We did the same night as Chapter 15, but again, we didn't have anybody show up to that open house. So real quickly, 3 amendments. The first amendment, looking at our ordinance, we noticed that Title 4 in our current ordinance was not in the table of contents. It's in our code, but not in the table of contents. So we're just adding that into the table of contents, so it's a full and complete table of contents. Amendment 2, we changed the statute of authority. The one we had in there wasn't incorrect, but it wasn't the direct statute that gives us the authority, so we wanted to make sure that we had the correct one in there. And then third, essentially because we're going through this ordinance to change, or this process to change that one statute, we also need to change the date of adoption for when the county board adopts it. So it's a pretty simple one. It was just a statute swap out to make sure we had a clear statute of authority.
Any questions? Yeah, pretty simple. What do we update those fees for non-metallic? I thought we just did them. The fees for non-metallic mining, when do we update those? I thought we just did them, but,
Yeah, last spring.
okay. Do we do those annually or every other year?
Sorry, what?
Sorry.
I'm sorry.
Do we do those every year or every other year?
I think it's kind of as a ad-needed basis. It's not necessarily
That's
every
when we
year.
get full cost recovery, don't we?
Yes, that program, yep, that's where we get full cost recovery. That was one of the reasons for the update, was to try and improve the cost recovery of that.
Sure.
It's something we'll continue to look at moving forward, but there's not like a set every other year schedule for it.
Okay, that's an aside to this, but still related. Okay.
Chair Longenhan, I'm sorry, the reason I was interrupting Shad is because of the public hearing. I think, did you call for opposed? And I think we need to make sure we call for both sides.
Oh, you're right.
So we probably have to revisit 15 then.
Well, let's finish this one,
Yep,
and we'll go back to the
yeah,
other
there you
one.
go. I told you it'd be the longest one.
Golly. All right. Well, I got to be out of here by 5:30, so that's my time cap, everybody. I'm not going to keep you here until 9 o'clock tonight. All right. All right. Any other questions for Shad with this one? No? Okay. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of, what are we on here? 6A5. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 6A5, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to item 6A5, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for item 6A5, calling once. Seeing as no one else was testified in this public hearing, I'm now declaring the public hearing for 6A5 now closed. Committee will now deliberate. Anybody like to make a motion to approve these? Supervisor Ritter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll make a motion to approve the text amendment change to Chapter 21.
Okay, motion approved for 6A5. Second. Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. All right, we'll jump back to 6A4. So, Shad offered his testimony. We'll just rule out that motion that was made prior. Anybody wishing to speak in favor of 6A4, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak opposed to 6A4, calling once. Anybody wishing to speak as interested for 6A4, calling once. Seeing else no one wishes to testify for item 6A4, I'm now declaring the public hearing now closed. Committee will now deliberate. Would anybody like to make a motion? Supervisor Shafinsky.
I will move that we approve 6A4, the text changes to Chapter 15, and move those to the county board for their approval.
Sounds good. Motion's been made. Is there a second? Second by Supervisor Unger. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Lori, thank you. I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at anybody on the committee. I'm just, I thought we were through all that.
I apologize. I was asleep on that.
I'm glad you did that. I'm glad you did that. All right, 6B, review and possible recommendations, county board for its consideration, town zoning changes pursuant to Wisconsin statute 60.62 sub 3. We have one, Town of Wausau, Chapter 17 Amendment Update, Section 17.44 AT-1/40 Agriculture Transition District.
Yep, so we received a resolution from the town of Wausau regarding an ordinance change for one of their agricultural transition districts as a text amendment.
What
And
exactly?
they did provide all the recommended documentation to our department as well.
Can you just describe broadly what an agriculture transition district is?
I don't know 100%
okay.
for sure, but my guess is it would be similar to our rural estate district.
Okay. So it's one of the classifications as part of their code.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, thank you. So this is one of those housekeeping ones that we do every so often. So I think a motion to approve here in order would be appropriate. Supervisor Drabek,
I'll make a motion to approve that.
motion to approve has been made. Supervisor Drabek, is there a second? Second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We're on to page 2. All right. 6C, review and policy recommendations to county board for its consideration. Are all of those included as part of that presentation?
Correct.
Right, Lori? Okay, so we'll handle items 6, 1 through 4. Like I said, I think staff, as part of the packets, they made a PowerPoint to talk about each one of these. So we'll just start with that.
Okay, so I'm going to address all 4 budget items, and then I'm going to invite our county conservationist, Kirsty Heidenreich, to give a little more specifics about each of the grants that is proposed in the budget transfer. But I just wanted to say a couple things in terms of what's here. The first one related to the aerator, I just wanted to remind the committee that this was the direction of the county board when we came before you in late 2022, early 2023, asking for environmental impact funds for the aerators. So we were directed to attempt to apply for additional funds through the DNR to help supplement the costs there, and we were successful. Items 2 and 4 from the Nature Conservancy and the Good Idea Mini Grant. Typically, for our efforts in the Eau Plaine watershed, we do receive money from the Department of Agriculture to fund a lot of those efforts. That money did come in a little shy this year in terms of what we usually get, so these grants are actually going to help us supplement typical grant funding that we get to continue our efforts there. And then item 3, the other Department of Agricultural money for $1,350. As part of the nutrient management planning program, there are 15 to 20 counties that get planning funds from the Department of Agriculture to do those efforts, and sometimes they also have additional initiative funds that they actually just give to us. We don't really, I don't want to say we don't have a say in it, but they actually just give us additional funds that are to help our farmers in implementing things related to the nutrient management planning. So that is why the $1,350 is in here for our budget as well. I will turn it over to County Conservationist Kirsty Heidenreich to explain a few more details about what's in the grants themselves.
Hello, everyone. We're going to be so fast, and it's all such good news. Everyone's going to leave in such a good mood, talking about the beautiful things that conservation does and all of the wonderful money we're receiving to do it. So popping back to the DNR grant that Lori referenced, we are very excited about this grant and the size of it because this year the Wisconsin surface water grants were the most competitive they've ever been. They received $9 million in requests across the state of Wisconsin, and they only had $6 million to reward. So they had to cut $3 million out of that. Most of the groups that did receive a reward only received a partial reward. So in a rare turn of events, not only did we receive our grant, but we received the full amount that we asked for. So we are beyond thankful for that. And so, like Lori had mentioned, this will supplement some of the costs for the aerators that the county board had already generously set aside some money for. And then there are partnerships upon partnerships with the other interesting projects we're going to be doing with this grant. A lot of what we wrote into this grant was actually what our predecessors envisioned when they wrote the plan called Strategies for Reducing Fish Kills on the Big Old Plain Reservoir that came out almost a decade ago after the colossal fish kill that we all learned about. You know, about 20 different partners came together and said, what are we going to do? They wrote this beautiful plan, but there was no money or resources to go with it. So most things in that plan never really had any momentum to get going. So we kind of cherry picked out some of those ideas, and we are jump starting those ideas with the surface water grant. And so we're working with the DNR Fisheries team and also the Big Old Plain Citizens Organization, who are also putting funds towards a multi-year fish movement study on the Big Old Plain Reservoir. So this summer, we are going to start with a little bit of testing on the reservoir in terms of tracking fish. But next summer, we literally will be working with the fisheries team to capture fish, insert transmitters in their tummies, and see exactly where they're going in the reservoir. So we're going to identify those critical areas of habitat that they're using on the Big Old Plain. And once we know where they're going for good supplies of oxygen, we're able to protect and enhance that critical habitat on the reservoir. So it's just, okay, Garrett's got it. Okay, we're also going to develop a manure advisory system specifically for the Big Old Plain watershed. This already exists in the state of Wisconsin at the state level. So if anyone has ever seen bumper stickers or the website that says, if it's red, don't spread, it's like a weather forecast. And if your area shows red on the map of Wisconsin, that means do not spread because there's precipitation or a runoff event imminent. So we don't want manure, out on the landscape because it will eventually hit water if you're spreading your manure then. We're also going to collaborate with the parks and health departments to test for bacteria at the Big Old Plain County Park swimming beach, and not only test a couple of times a month, but also install some educational signage there that currently is not there, just especially, for families to kind of get that information on, if I have young children swimming in this water, what should I be looking for? What should I be aware of? Since that is very typically used by families at that beautiful park. And then lastly, we'd also just like to conduct some summer and fall monitoring that helps us collect some of that scientific data that will better help us track things in the reservoir. Next is the Nature Conservancy Conservation Innovation Grant. The Nature Conservancy has really stepped up over the past couple of years in the state of Wisconsin. There really wasn't a lot going on, and now they're really focusing on working with conservation groups and farmers, as they know that a lot of our surface water health is related to watershed health and what's happening on the landscape. So we received $10,000 for our farmer-led group EPIC, and like Lori mentioned, that's going to supplement the money that we normally get from the State Department of Agriculture. And what EPIC is focusing on this year is giving financial stipends to landowners to work with their operators to try to reduce phosphorus index on their land. So if I am a landowner and I'm not farming that land myself, but I receive a rental payment from someone, then they are incentivized to ask that person that they're renting their land to do conservation practices so that the phosphorus index lowers. So less phosphorus leaving their fields into surface waters. So small financial incentives to hopefully get some good momentum going in that watershed. Our nutrient management implementation grant, this is just a couple of extra pennies in our pocket this year, and what it's going to do is it's going to take some of our nutrient management plans to a higher level than what they currently are. So in our county, we have about 70% of our acres that are covered by nutrient management plans, which are plans that help guide farmers on how much manure or commercial fertilizer they are putting on the landscape. And oftentimes those plans are not actually, looked at in a great amount of detail or sat down afterwards for kind of a debrief with the farmer and talked in a way such as, how did that work for you this past year? Do you feel like we need to make any adjustments? So what this grant is doing is it's allowing agronomists and farmers to sit down together and take that extra step and kind of do a debrief on their plan and try to make it better for the next year. And then lastly, the Good Idea Mini Grant from Mississippi State University. If you're wondering why on earth Mississippi State University is sending money to us up in Wisconsin, it's because it was part of a very big Mississippi River Basin initiative where folks down south are so eager for cleaner water that they're working with partners up north, like Minnesota and Wisconsin, and saying, hold the line up there, guys. We really need your help. Please, for the love of God, stop sending all that phosphorus down here to the Gulf of Mexico. So they're incentivizing good farming practices way up north, which I think is just awesome that they're that forward thinking. And so this is a super cool grant where EPIC is working with our department, with Pheasants Forever, with Short Lane Egg Supply, and then local landowners to create phosphorus reducing filter strips. Another word for them is buffers. You can see on the picture, there's green buffers, and in the middle of those green buffers, there's tiny little waterways going through there where there's active water moving. And so they'll do 3 different types of buffers. One will be beautiful pollinator plantings, one will be just for wildlife, and one will be perennial hay that can be harvested. And the whole goal of this is try to make a really good educational videos that can be used in social media. So Short Lane Egg Supply already has a huge social media following. So they're going to create social media reels and videos showing drone shots and videos and everything about how cool these buffers will be here in Wisconsin. And then all that social media is going to be used all up and down the Mississippi River Basin. So pretty neat what's happening there. Are there any questions about all that good news?
It's good news. I hate to rain on the parade.
You don't have to.
I know I don't have to, but I want to ask this. With the DNR and their grant, has there been any discussions yet about long-term sustainability for the aerators out there? I know that we made a good commitment this last year, and I'm happy that the county board did that. I'm just wondering 20 years in the future what that's going to look like.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that there's been talk about 20 years in the future, but we do have an updated MOA now since the last time we've met with multiple county committees. And so we have year by year cost breakdowns that each of the partners are committed to for things like electricity and maintenance and manpower. So we have that. The life of our current ones, they've lasted like 80 years. So we would hope that with this size of investment, we shouldn't have to worry about a substantial upgrade or replacement in hopefully any of our lifetimes. But
Are you asking about the life cycle of the new air, like when the aerator is replaced?
Given our interest in what's going on out there, and it sounds like the DNR has an interest as well, I'm just trying to think, listen, grant money's great. It's one time, and thinking about their commitment to that area in the long term. That's really what I'm getting at. The updated MOA information helps, though. I'm glad to hear that. And of course, $99,000 is great to get from them as well. I just want to make sure that, they're in the game as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Not that it's great to get money from Mississippi. We'll take it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So budget transfers. So we're the committee of jurisdiction. We would approve them here. They have to go to HR Finance, and then from there they go to the county board? Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So if anybody's willing to, I'd be willing to entertain a motion to take all 4 of these together. That way we don't have to have 4 separate motions. Supervisor Shafinsky?
I would like to make a motion that we approve the budget transfers outlined in C1 through 4, and approve those budget transfers and move that to the county board for their approval.
Well, I guess it doesn't matter, right? Because HR Finance is going to take it up anyway.
Correct, they'll take it up as well. Yeah.
It doesn't matter, yeah, but, okay, motion has been made. Is there a second? Second from Supervisor Overbeck. Any further discussion? Seeing, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. We are on to, we got nothing for D7, educational presentations, outcome monitoring reports, and committee discussion. A1, brief aerator update.
But we don't actually have any slides for this, and I think Kirsty already started to touch on this, but because we had the aerator funds as one of the budget transfers, we just did want to make the ERC aware of the progress that has been made in getting the aerators replaced. So as she mentioned, a new MOA with the Partners for Maintenance has been negotiated, as well as we, with the money that the county board approved, we took a portion of those funds to work with a contractor and the partner group to get a new design for the aerator, and now we're at a point of having an RFP to go out and purchase for that replacement and installation of the new aerator. It does, because the DNR will be taking ownership of the aerator, they do have to approve it through their processes as well, so it is with them.
Does that mean that we have to do their bidding too, like the state bidding process, I mean?
I believe we can still do, based on my previous discussions with the Corporation Council, we can still do it through our
Good.
process.
Okay, good.
But, so they are reviewing the RFP essentially from an engineering standpoint to make sure it meets their specifications to take ownership of it.
Okay.
Yeah, is where we're at right now. We expect that review to be completed any day now, and then we will be able to go out for bid this spring. So-
Okay. Questions?
No, that's great.
All right. We've got 2 groundwater plan updates, sampling Eastern groundwater meeting and potential for Marathon County ARPA funds for all mitigation efforts.
Okay, we wanted to provide another groundwater plan update, also with the idea of, we wanted to talk to you all about another discussion the groundwater group has been having to see what the ERC would think of this idea as it relates to ARPA funding, and what research and questions we should be asking essentially to, if we were going to bring a project forward. But to start, I did want to provide a brief sampling update. I think when we came before you and gave an update before, we had mentioned we had completed the eastern side and had gotten almost 250 samples there. We started a second round of sampling in the last, I guess, 6 weeks or so. We got signups at the end of the year and the beginning of the year, and the sampling is just wrapping up now. We did get almost 700 signups through that, and we have about 600, almost 600 returned at this point. So we're at about 800, give or take a little more, in terms of actual samples collected. We will be doing one more round of sampling very soon, hopefully in the near future. It's predominantly going to be to fill in gaps in towns where we didn't get as much or as many signups as we had hoped for, or some people asked for the kit, missed it this round for one reason or another, so we'll get them in the next round is what we hope. So we are still shooting for 1,000 collected. We have had over 1,000 signups, but sometimes people get the kit and they don't get it turned in. So that's what we're going for. Overwhelmingly, all the feedback we have gotten related to the sampling has been positive and gratitude. We get that pretty much every time somebody turns in a sample at the remote locations. Any meetings or conversations we've had, people are really excited that the sampling is going on and that the county has invested in this. The eastern results are generally in line with the state averages. So the Stevens Point Water and Environmental Analysis Lab is finishing up those results right now. And basically they're saying that what we're seeing on the eastern side thus far is keeping us in line with what they would expect to see in terms of state averages. I don't have a full presentation to give you yet, and we are going to invite the UW Stevens Point to give a full presentation to the county board, but we would like them to get the western information in there as well, and they're still completing some analysis on the eastern side. And I can't tell you anything about the western yet because it's literally in their labs right now being being sampled. So. As it relates to, because we were able to finish one round of eastern sampling, we did actually go ahead and have a meeting offering, anyone in the county could actually come to it. And we did actually see one person from the western side of the county make the trip all the way over to the eastern side for a groundwater meeting on February 22nd. When we scheduled it, we did not I did not recognize it was on the same night as the county board meeting. So was not thinking ahead there. Supervisor Seafelt did actually still manage to make a quick appearance at that meeting. We had approximately 35 folks attend throughout the meeting, and UW Stevens Point was able to offer a little bit of information about what the preliminary results are saying. And we also gave the attendees an overview of a lot of the different programs we do at the county that are helpful to keeping our groundwater quality safe and protected. So we had representatives from the health department, we had representatives from CPZ and from the UW Stevens Point that were just giving an overview of the different types of conservation and our POUTS programs and things like that that we're doing for the county. And from there, people were able to connect with those staff and ask a lot of good questions, and Kirsty can tell you a little bit about some of the follow-up. We got a lot of people who, regardless of if they had their water sampled or what their results said, they actually approached to set up follow-up meetings because they were interested in taking advantage of some of our programs and establishing good conservation practices to keep protecting groundwater. And she can tell you a little bit more about that if you have questions. The other thing that's been going on is we have continued to meet with our groundwater group as we go through this process. And at our last meeting, we actually did have a really good discussion again about how we can best assist landowners within the county if they do want to do something to improve their water quality. If their samples come back and they're above the thresholds and they want to make some investment in better improving their well. So I think we've mentioned to you all before that the state ARPA funds for well mitigation that were set aside are set to run out this year. So we did have a discussion with the groundwater group again in terms of like if the county were going to look at using any of our ARPA funds, what would be a good project or what would be good projects to bring forward. We learned from Chippewa County that they've actually gone forward with making an investment in community refill stations under the ARPA rule. This falls under the make necessary investments in water, sewer, or broadband infrastructure. And what they are working on is a couple of community wells within Chippewa County that allow people access to clean water whenever they need it, but also it's a possibility for emergency management. In an emergency situation, they will also have established areas where people can come and get water. For some reason, their access to clean water is cut off temporarily or long-term. We talked to our emergency management department about this too. They also saw a real added benefit in perhaps pursuing a project like this for the county, that we would have these stations located throughout the county. Again, they could be used on a regular basis, but they could also be used on an emergency basis. So I'll let Kirsty add a little more to that as well, but I think, you know, what we're looking for is what the ERC kind of thinks of a project idea like this and what kinds of questions or things we should investigate that could potentially make this a viable project to bring forward to the county board for funding consideration. We did also have some pictures that Chippewa County sent us of their sort of design for these community refill stations. I wanted to point out that this is actually like Administrator Leonard asked if it was on a bike path, and I said no, I think that was just the picture. There's actually cars in this picture too. It could certainly be located on a regional bike path if that was the idea, but I think Chippewa just had done a design that included people bicycling by. So, do you want to add any more on the community refill stations?
Yeah. Oh, sure. I'll also just add that as we've been going around the county working with rural landowners to fill out the ARPA well compensation grant paperwork, if you guys remember, there's that $10 million the DNR set aside where our department has just been absolutely hustling to try to get the most money in Marathon County, you know, for our landowners. You know, we're at like almost $400,000, the second highest county in the state, because we help so many people fill out these grants. What we hear over and over, because you know, we work with these people, they have to get 2 well tests and they both have to come back as bad or as unsafe, okay? So they get 2 well tests that are unsafe. We tell them immediately, please stop drinking this water, get bottled water. What's their first response? we can't afford to buy all that bottled water, So when we hear that as a constant barrier, people are drinking unsafe water because they cannot afford to get clean water. What an opportunity we have here to provide that immediate solution to people. And not only for people that just have unsafe wells, but, if there is some type of community emergency, to say, thank goodness we have these spots where people can go to and refill. What a blessing that could be in terrible situations that we hope don't come our way. But, it is a unique opportunity to have those there as well. So ideally, we would have more than one around the county. We would hopefully have a couple so that people wouldn't have to drive, 45 minutes to get to one. We did learn a few things about them, things like, we can't attach them to a municipal water supply. That's actually not legal, so we couldn't do it, in the city of Wausau limits. So we, had some ideas like, what if we, partnered with the town hall to do something in a rural township? Because that would also be an added benefit to them as well, that their town has that right there, for their residents. So lots of neat ideas, but as we've been to a couple of different statewide conferences and meetings too, it really sounds like this idea is something that a lot of parts of Wisconsin are looking to, as they have more and more residents who are learning that, they have wells that are maybe unsafe, and it is too much of a barrier to either dig a new well, or maybe it's not possible for them to dig a new well to get to safe water. So it's just kind of something that's kind of an out of the box solution that, we feel could benefit so many people, not just people with well problems. Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I was distracted. There's something going on in the parking lot with the sheriff's department. So
Cool.
I was still listening though. As far as the two types of projects, regarding the ARPA stuff. So first of all, I want us to be realistic about this, that I had a discussion with the chair when this idea got brought up, and basically the indication was that there's a finite amount of funds left. As far as the well mitigation fund, I don't know how that could be stretched a long ways for a number of reasons. One is that the cost of a new well and how much money is remaining, there may be some problems there. On top of that, I thought that money under that use, if it's the making necessary investments in water, sewer, and broadband, I thought that was meant more for municipal systems as opposed to rehabilitating like private well systems. So I don't know how the state is justifying that, but I'd be curious. And the other thing is, as far as the community system, or the, what's the word?
Community
verbiage
refill
here?
stations.
Community refill stations, thank you. We're such a big county, I don't know if that'd be appropriate, because, where would you put like, if somebody did have something happen to their well system, and it was at a town hall, well, if you had two of them, one on each side of the county, no matter what, people are gonna be traveling a long ways to go and get that water. The other issue I see is the long-term upkeep with that, as far as, how, if the county would use those ARPA funds up front to build those structures, who's gonna keep maintaining them? Would the town do it if it was on the town's land, or would it be the county? And even then, where are the resources gonna come from in order to maintain them? So at this point, I'm a little bit lukewarm for both of those ideas, just because I think there's a finite amount of resources out there. But I'm glad it's brought up, because I want to hear from the rest of the committee. So, other thoughts? Roger Stravinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question would be one of the fiscal issues, and I also have questions about the logistics, because we do have a very, very large county, and having one or two or four, it's nice, but I don't know that I see 4 of these stations as being meaningful. But what is the thinking in terms of the dollar amount that we would be looking at for one of these stations, and what is the capability of it? I mean, you have a pretty picture here, but that pretty picture doesn't look like it would be something that would you could tool up with your truck or your vehicle and load up with 40 or 50 gallons worth of water to take back if on an emergency basis. It looks more of a smaller facility. So can you give a little bit more detail on what the thinking was there?
So I guess I'll say that I think this is why we're having this discussion. We don't know all the questions yet. And so like we want to start. Yeah.
And
but if you know the answer to the I don't know that we know the answer to the capacity yet. So.
And let me,
Yeah.
I just want to make one point. I want to frame this a little bit differently. This is on the agenda for discussion today, so I just want us to have a discussion about it. There's no need to make a decision today. If there's additional information that's needed, like I think some of the points that Supervisor Stravinsky made were very valid, then we can collect those and bring it back for future discussion. I hope it didn't make it sound like I was trying to frame it in a negative light. It's just that those are my concerns regarding this project. So, potential project.
Okay.
So Supervisor Overbeck, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a great idea because if you're out of water, I mean, that's a critical item, especially for if infants or whatever, if you don't have that water to cook with or whatever. I mean, you can say boil it, but if you've got certified clean water, I think that's a real benefit. And I think placement can be worked out as far as even looking at, you don't put it at the end of the counties, you put it in the middle of each section. Even two of them could serve on 29, a lot of residents. So I think it's a great, if something happens as far as a tornado or something that really, you can't control, it's at least a source for it in a very quick and easy method.
Supervisor Drabeck, then I had another comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering, okay, let's say it happens, we get winter. What keeps that all from freezing? What happens if the power goes out, you can't pump the water? Is there going to be a backup system there? Things like that.
Yeah.
I have a hunch you're going to be talking to Chippewa County about this.
We've
stuff.
talked to them. Yeah, and those are all good questions. So this is a refill station that is made for large supply refills. So it's not, like we use the water fountain over here and we put our little water bottle underneath it. It's not meant for that. It's meant to bring, those big 8-gallon blue jugs from like Culligan's you can buy, or at the grocery store. You bring the big containers and you fill it up and you have constant water pressure and it's coming out more than what we would put into our little water bottle. So it's not meant to be like a recreational refill station. This is an industrial refill station. And I call it industrial because it can, I forget the exact temperature it's safe to, but it is like safe for an Alaskan winter. I mean, I think it's like -50 degrees is where it starts running into problems. So it's meant for the harshest weather. On top of that, when Chippewa County decided to invest in this, they did decide they wanted to do this little housing unit around it so that, in big snowfall situations or, big ice storms, so that way it is protected just a little bit more, and hoping that would also maybe increase the lifespan of it as well. These are not super expensive. They're about $15,000, but everything else that Chippewa County wanted to do to upgrade it, such as the housing, they also gave us some electric and plumbing quotes, which they caveated, it seems ungodly expensive. Check into it in your area. Because they were seeing about $38,000 a station when it was all said and done. But that was with the electricity costing $14,000. Which again, it's like, yes, I would agree that's ungodly expensive. So who knows? But it itself, it's $15,000. So this isn't like $200,000 a pop here. These are very affordable to have done, and they can be used by all sorts of people, whether it is a recreationist, that's out and about. But I do think that people would make the drive to come to these. Just hearing what I've heard around the county. I had someone call me yesterday from the Athens area, and he said, we have no water. Our livestock has no water. The farms are pumping so hard to try to get water around here. We are in a drought. They said, what should we do? We have no water. And I have nothing to tell them except for I'm so sorry. You know, we don't have resources here right now. Where do you send someone in that scenario? And I could tell he was an elderly person. We know that is an area of our county where there are major groundwater quantity problems. So I was not shocked to hear that, but we have people calling us and telling us, I do not have any water. This is a solution. I could have said, well, go to the community refill station off of Highway 29. Go to the big old Plain County Park where we have a refill station for you.
So is that gentleman, was he an egg producer or was he like a neighbor?
He is near a farm in Athens, a large farm. And we have several in that area.
Questions, comments? I also don't know how many, I don't want to speak on behalf of any towns, but I don't know how many towns would be willing to do this either, because theoretically, it could be additional traffic to their town halls, more wear and tear in the parking lot. You know, I like to think about it like, and maybe some of you that live in the metro area can call me out if I say anything wrong here, but when Wausau started to have their PFAS problems within the last couple of years, I recall bottled water was the immediate solution, right? There was filters, yes, filters. So let's play that situation out with these refill situations there. Suddenly there's going to be an influx of people from Wausau coming out to the rural areas going to those town halls, right? So that's my concern too, is that are there going to be these periods where it's going to be like a rush on those systems and then it goes back down, or is it going to be steady use? You know, if there's only 4 stations for potentially 138,000 people, I have some concerns there, right? You know? Okay. Again, I'm not trying to derail this discussion. I'm just trying to think of logistics here. So, Supervisor Obrecht.
I just think they're more for emergency situations where it's really a dire need and it hasn't hit the whole area. It's spots that got hit, you know, such as the tornado in February that was down in southern Wisconsin. You know, what do those people do? Even if it's a heat wave or whatever, and, you know, the electricity goes off, how do you get water, potable water that you know is safe? And that's the critical in the rural areas. How do you know that water is safe? A flood, for some reason, or whatever that takes out. So I think, you know, we're talking more and more. I'm working with WPAC on their county, and it's more safe rooms and emergency government, and it's all these discussions about what happens, but it's going to happen 1 in 100 years, but it's still there, and you need it at that time. So I think it could be for recreational use too, and you know, so it could be an always active system, but when the emergency hits, you have it to send people to, and I think that's important.
I'm not discounting that, and I don't want to ignore what Kirsty just provided either. I don't want to give off that impression. I don't want anybody to think that that's what I'm doing. I'm very hesitant to invest even $60,000, and let's say that by the time the services are all done, say it's $80,000 on something that is going to have this sporadic use, and I don't know how you work out the logistics with the towns, or even if towns are the places where you have these things. But then, of course, where do you have them if it's not at the town halls? And the very last thing I'll say, because I've hogged the mic enough, and I don't want to have a full in-depth discussion today. I just want to have a little bit of a preview here. What's to say that the town hall water is the safest water that's out there too? How many town halls in the county have running water? And in my 40-hour-a-week job, I've been to town halls where there's no running water. They're out there, you know. So there's nothing to say that the town hall water is the solution either, because maybe that's contaminated too.
Yeah,
So-
that was just a small idea. Chippewa County worked with Dr. Kevin Massar from WSP to find ideal locations based on all of the surrounding well tests, the water supply.
Yep.
The water is tested. The water would have to be tested monthly. at the location we would pick. I mean, it could be, I mean, we also talked about a place like Big O Plain County Park. You know, you have thousands of people there all summer. Oh my gosh, how much would campers love having a water refill station there, you know? So there are many other places we could brainstorm together other than town halls. We just thought, I mean, if I was a town board member, I would think it would be super sweet to have one at my town. That's just me.
Again, I don't want to speak on behalf of the towns, but I think the towns are going to be thinking about where are the costs going to, where are they going to come from?
Yeah. Yep.
So where does Chippewa County have theirs planned to go?
Like you want a location?
I don't know, I don't remember if they gave us,
Add to the list.
yeah.
Just
Yeah,
add to the
For
list.
next time?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a map.
Yeah.
Based on, they mapped
Okay.
out all the nitrate areas in the county and picked the safest spot for their first one.
Okay.
Supervisor Ober.
Oh, sorry, Supervisor Roback.
You know, I look at these and I just think they're glorified drinking fountains in some cases. Or what do we do in our camping areas as far as water sources, the pitch pump or whatever that's taking what you know has been tested water. And I think that's one advantage is when you get a group of people, you have that source that you know is potable water that is safe. And you can't say that for everywhere you get water out of, that you're afraid to drink out of a drinking fountain in some places or whatever. So I think it's an advantage for the whole community when they do have these.
Other questions, comments? Okay,
I think what we'd like to do then is take some of this and investigate a little more and bring
That's
back
fair.
some more.
that's fair. I'm more than willing to have discussions about this. I'm more than willing to. As far as the mitigation fund, let's circle back to that before we end the discussions, though. Can some discussions some discussions with some finance leadership as far as the remaining amount of ARPA funds be had, so we could maybe frame this a little bit better as far as what kind of money we could or could not work with? Because even if it's $100,000, given how much it costs to drill a new well, that's not gonna go very far.
You're talking about what might be left in the Marathon County.
ARPA,
Yeah.
the pool of ARPA funds that's still out there.
Right, and my understanding, and I'm not 100% on this, but we might not know for a month or two is my understanding until,
Fine.
yeah, okay.
I mean, that gives us time to have some more discussion too. Yes.
Do you know if they provide emergency power to these or these pumps that,
Power?
yeah, emergency power, like a generator, a backup generator or whatever, that they're able to either hook onto or provide it at the site?
Yes, yeah, we can get more information on that too, but I know for a fact that Chippewa County designed these to be used in those emergency situations. So like the extreme weather, the high winds, no power, all of that.
Okay.
We'll get you info.
Supervisor Shafinsky?
That was addressed.
Okay, okay. All right, other comments, questions? All right, thank you, Christie, appreciate it.
Are you gonna do that or was that?
I have little notes on it.
Let's see what we got here. All right, brief update on Farmland Pres Plan, 7A3. Oh, Christie's back, okay.
It's gonna be so brief.
All right.
Okay. So we've had a public comment period for our farmland preservation plan. People aren't knocking down the doors to get in here to tell us anything about that. I know you've all read the full farmland preservation plan, so I won't go into it in detail. You all are looking at me with sneaky smiles. So, good news, I think that we haven't seen a whole lot of like feedback in terms of people not liking what they're seeing. So we're gonna assume that no news is good news. What we would like to do is the next step is to get ERC's approval of the final draft. So I think we would be ready to do that as early as at the next meeting, if you wouldn't be opposed to it. Once we would get the final draft of you guys, taking a vote here in the meeting, what we would do is then we would give that draft to Corporation Counsel. So Mike Puner would review it for consistency with our comprehensive plan. Then once we get his approval, then we would send it to the Wisconsin Department of Agriculture for their approval. So once we receive your approval, Corp Council's approval, DATCAP approval, Seems backwards, but then the next step is it comes back to you guys, to ERC, to have a public hearing for the farmland preservation plan. So that way, when it's public hearing time, you know it's like solid because all of these people have approved it.
So quick question then, that sounds like a more than 1 month process, right? So if we.
Yes, we have to have it done by the end of this year. So we have a little bit of time, but we're trying to speed it up as quick as we can.
So, I don't know we've got elections in April. We would have that one meeting to start that farmland preservation process before the new board is seated. So by the time that plan gets back, the new board, it could be a potential ERC committee, different ERC committee is what I'm saying.
Okay, that'll be okay because they'll like it too. They'll be
Sound very
fine.
confident.
Everything's, you know what? Everything's gonna be fine.
All right.
It's gonna be fine.
All right. Okay. I'm just putting it out there. So,
Yes.
all right, that's fine.
It's a very simple, non-controversial plan with
Sure.
lots of nice maps talking about how great agriculture is in Marathon County. What's not to love? Okay, so then there's going to be an ERC public hearing after all that's done, and then the full county board will approve it, and we'll get all that done by the end of December.
Okay.
That's the game plan.
Sounds good.
Okay, that's my update.
All right. Any questions for that? No?
Okay.
All right, cool. A, policy issues, well, A, we've got nothing. 9, next meeting, April 2nd, 2024, 3 PM, Assembly Room, future agenda items. A, committee members are asked to bring ideas for future discussion. B, announcements, requests, correspondence. I don't believe I have anything.
I was
So,
just going to make
Lori?
an announcement as it relates to the Assembly's ordinance.
Oh, sure.
That the next step, because it wasn't taken up for action, so it is going back to the work group to take some of the comments that we got from the committees and work it through some more. I do not have that meeting scheduled yet, so if anyone wants to be kept up to date on that, I will keep them up to date on when that gets scheduled. But we have, I think, a host of additional questions that have been presented that the work group is going to take up and see what we can do with it, so, yeah.
Okay. Very good. Like I said, I don't have anything for B, so I am number 10. Motion by Supervisor Seefeld, second by Supervisor Ritter. Any further discussion? Seeing and hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, RC. Thank you, staff, for all your work. Appreciate it. Safe travels home, everybody. Oh, I can sign that today? Oh, it's my favorite part.
Actually approved last June.
Need a better hat, though.